What is happening out there, Roto Scouts basketball fans? Welcome to the show, gang. Wednesday show. Almost fell out of my head what day it was there. I was going to say welcome to the Wednesday show, and then I stopped myself and had to keep on rolling. But it is Wednesday, pretty sure. Halfway through the week, hump day. Interesting 13 gamer for NBA fans out there. A lot of action tonight. Should be a good one. Should be better than last night's clunker of a 3-gamer. That Knicks-Cleveland game put up, I think, just over 200 combined. Fell 14 points short of the very low total that it had. That was a bit of a disappointment. Donovan Mitchell only going for like 40-something last night. Had some good lineups, had some chasers late. Too much Bones Highland in the end. I was hoping for Bones Highland night last night. We'll probably end up getting it tonight with like 50% of the world on him on the FanDuel slate. I late swapped to a ton when he went into the starting lineup. Didn't quite get there. Had a really weak like first quarter. First like 8 minutes or so of that game was pretty light scoring. 8-game had 8 games here. What's up, 8-game? 8-game had 100% Donovan Mitchell across 150, which did not help 8-game do anything last night. I'm going to guess that didn't go well. I had a fair amount of them myself. Cujo's here. What's up, Cujo? I assume those are emojis that you guys are putting in. On my end, where I'm looking at it in the StreamYard site, it just says like colons, and then it says hand-pink-waving. I'm going to assume that's a... Right back at you, Cujo. 8-game sent one of those, too. Handful of folks in here. Aloysius is here. What's up, Aloysius? Money time. Love it. Thankfully, it was just the $2 and the 50 cent. Yeah. Yeah, always better to have those in those clunker nights in the lower stakes, for sure. We've got a lot to work with tonight. Some really juicy totals. A lot of question marks still lingering about who's in, who's out. I think the most concerning one, we got the Kyrie is now doubtful. I took him out of projections. I don't think he's going to go. We had a couple other ones. The news that Kevin Love was going to be questionable and Hayden Highsmith was going to be probable led me to just kind of say, all right, Love will probably be out. Highsmith will probably be in. Give him those minutes. That kind of seemed like a natural. So Haywood Highsmith picked up Kevin Love's... I think I gave him like 18 or 17 of the 20 minutes that I had given Love originally. Took Kevin Love out. If he ends up playing, he'll go back in. What was the other news that we've gotten? RJ Barrett is questionable for the Knicks now. We'll work through that one. I left him in the projections. We'll work through that if he pops up later on. It'll probably be after the show. We're probably going to go 4 to 5 today. And you know that means that it'll probably go to 5:30. But if RJ comes out, that's, I don't think, the most complicated situation in the world. It's pretty straight downstream effect on the Knicks there. How about Isaiah Hartenstein, by the way? Did anybody get to that one? I had a fair amount of him after I brought him up on the show, but he went out and had a game. I could see him doing a little repeat of that performance. Mitch burnt us last night. What was it, a 18-point performance in the end by Mitch? Awful, but Hartenstein got there, which will be the case. It'll be one or the other one again. Tonight could definitely be Mitch's night. Poe Degen Stoner needs to know if anyone knows if the goalie's confirmed in the Ducks-Coyotes game. Just kidding. Hit the like button, you filthy animals. Love it. Always easy to find that out by going to, what's that site? What the hell's the Daily Faceoff? DailyFaceoff.com has good information for NHL line combos, starting goaltenders. Which was he saying? The Ducks and the Coyotes. Ducks and the Coyotes. They are both confirmed. Karl Vejmelka and Lucas Dostal. Easy for me to say. I actually don't know those two names. I haven't spent too much time with hockey this year outside of just watching Rangers games. There's Trav. What's going on, Trav? I am doing well, buddy. You're doing well. I shouted it out on the show yesterday. Not sure if you were here, but for those that weren't here, and since he is here now, congrats, buddy. That's awesome. Could be Travis posted a screenshot from the afternoon slate on Sunday. Took down a 6-figure 100K winner. Binked the whole tournament. Awesome looking lineup. Loved it. love to see that. Made my day. I didn't have the greatest DFS Sunday. Had a blast going to the Bad Religion show and everything, but when I saw that, it made my DFS day. So that was awesome. So congrats one more time, Trav. Good to see you here, buddy. Live up in the air, 150 feet. Hardworking man. Back up 150 feet in the air. Just took down 100K, and he's up 150 feet in the air at the top of the crane, working hard on a Wednesday. Not bad, buddy, but congrats again. That was awesome. So wait and get the super chat. One of these days, we'll figure that out. 8Game plays a dollar of hockey every day. I actually have success when I dabble. It's been a minute. I haven't played any hockey slates yet this year. So I guess with that, we can kind of get into it. Just like yesterday, same additions to the sheet. So we've got the Ace Mind sim info in here. I just ran 2 sims real quick with the latest update. Some of the ownership, I think, is a little bit behind. It's, as usual, I'm using the RG's ownership. Not showing it here, but using it behind the scenes in the sim. I don't think it had caught up to their most recent updates. It definitely wasn't caught up to like the Haywood Highsmith change. So there might be a little bit of discrepancy between something that you might run even like, now, like 15 minutes later. Just depends on what ownership you're using. But that's going to be true if you're using stochastic ownership with Ace Mind Sims or RGs or anybody else's. Depending on the numbers that you put in, you're going to get different results, right? So it's based on where we are right now. This is what we're looking at. So somebody was asking about the big banana off the top of the board here for 12,900 on FanDuel, 12,600. You can have some Luka Doncic. So the way that the question was phrased in the Discord this morning was you can't play Luka for those prices. And I've talked about this each of the last couple of days when we've done these shows. The guys up here, these high-priced, 5-figure, big-ticket items, these are your luxury guys. These are the guys that the entire reason of rostering the cheapo guys with some good point per dollar numbers down here is to get to those guys. So you don't really view those guys necessarily through a too expensive, can't get to them, too popular, shouldn't use them type of a lens. It doesn't exist just on its own like that. You got to look at him relative, of course, to these guys that he's priced similarly to and what their relative ceilings and everything look like. And then it's a matter of how everything stacks up, obviously, as you're building lineups through the slate. If there's not enough support through the middle, or if it's a shorter slate, you're not going to be able to get to these guys as liberally. You're not going to be able to build out a lineup that would just have 12-9, or it would put you in a point where you're making a decision with 2 different spots open. All right, I could go to Steph at 10, and then I could have a better guy for, 7 or whatever, versus I can go to Luka at 12-9, and then I got somebody for 5. So you get yourself to that decision point, and then that's where it becomes better, worse plays between these guys, between your luxury items. But there's never a day where I would say you can't play Luka Doncic. He's a flat-out slate breaker any given slate. He is your flat-out top projected guy on both sites by a fair margin of points. You're about 5-point spread on both sites. So there's plenty of good reason to play Luka Doncic on any given slate. It's just a matter of how much damage are you doing to the rest of your lineup by putting that salary in. That's why to me, you build toward that, not away from that. You don't say he's the first man in. But there's never a day where I would say he's unplayable. Never a day where I would say if they made him like 15 grand, then we'll talk. But at these ranges where it still makes at least some sense, and you can always just quick shortcut to that is just do the points per dollar. It's a nice and simple way to break it down. At 466 on the FanDuel scale, he compares favorably with all the guys in his price tier. Same story on DK. Compares favorably, if not better than all the guys in his price tier. On DK, you've also got him as one of, 2, 3... No, actually, there's a fair number of them. I was going to say one of only a few high-end point guard options, but there's more than I thought. I was just looking at the multiple shooting guards there. So there's always good reason to go to him. That said, you're talking about a 3% top 1% rate, a 4.4% win rate on FanDuel. Does have a 0.54 positive ROI, just barely. 6% top 1 and win rates, negative 0.99 ROI on the DK slate. but one of the better luxury items still, even at the high price point. Sabonis, with no De'Aaron Fox, should see a bit of an uptick. Another guy at the high end, a major piece of the puzzle, I think, tonight, given how frequently he's coming up in the top lineups on both sites. Among the guys at the very, very top, Sabonis looks like one of the clear go-tos at least. Slightly negative ROI as an individual, but a part of a lot of winning lineups. As we come down board, Des Bane doesn't really qualify as one of these top flight guys. 8,700, not like he's priced like it, but an important piece of the puzzle as you go down the board there, and a highly projected spot. He's been pretty good this year, putting up 1.18 FanDuel points per minute on the DK scale. Let me narrow this back into, on the DK scale, 1.20, a pretty dominant point per dollar number on both sites. I think Desmond Bane is going to be another key from these top projected guys, and he is highly, highly affordable. I expect he's going to be very popular on both ends, but highly affordable. We've got, in the LA versus LA game, that's one where we've got news pending for the Clippers with both Kawhi and Paul George. None of the traded players are going to debut today, so no Harden, nobody, who the hell else came with him? Whatever. No Harden is the important part of that. And then Kawhi and Paul George on the second night of a back-to-back, both currently undetermined. So do we get one of them? Do we get both of them, since it's the Lakers on the other side and they're going to, the NBA's allegedly cracking down on that kind of a thing this year? Who the hell knows? It's very up in the air. That's also one where I could see, all right, maybe if those two guys aren't going, maybe it's a little bit of a scaled back night for LeBron. They've talked about wanting to give LeBron some rest or limit his action to some degree. And he's out there playing 34 minutes a night over the first 4 games. 32.8 minutes last time out, 35.6 fantasy points, giving us 1.3 fantasy points per minute, 1.34 on the DK scale. Single digits as far as how frequently he's coming up in the top lineups on FanDuel. A little bit more valuable on the DK slate, where he only costs 9,100. Small forward and power forward, we're starting to get into the territory where LeBron, the raw points per minute fantasy points per minute is not bad at all for that kind of money. So LeBron's kind of interesting on the DK board. We're at 97 on FanDuel against their higher cap. He's just kind of a good mix and match, good, very, very good high-end player with a fairly high ceiling. But he's not standing out as like an extreme discount. Not that he's an extreme discount on DK, but he's coming up a decent amount more often over there. And then we get a lot of meat through these guys. You can see as you go down, a lot of the less expensive mid-type guys. The 7s and the 6s are projected into the low 30s, the high 20s, become pretty valuable pieces. You can see that in whoever this is. Lonnie Walker, only a 24-point projection, but 5 points points per dollar, 35% in the top 1, 30% in the win. On the other side, he's Lonnie Walker the 4th over here, which I didn't catch, but he's coming up 26.8% of the time in the winning lineups over on the DK slate. Decent amount of value with him getting a lot of minutes in that depleted Nets rotation. So guys like that become very, very popular as we go down the board. Let me see if I can quickly fix him, see if there's anybody else that didn't pop up. Lonnie. DSJ. That's probably just no data. So it's Lonnie, Larry Nance, Kira Lewis. This is a mess. I don't even know if this is set up to catch these. I think it is. This is not that important that we do this right now, but I figure since we're here and we're going to be wanting to sort this board, might as well. This is how you do this for those that are unfamiliar. Kira Lewis. You just set you decide whatever name you want to go by goes in the first column, and then you just set lookups. Right? So then in your lookup, it's an if error statement. if you get an error looking up this name, then I want you to go look up and you tell it whichever one of these columns. So look up the FanDuel version, which is Otto Porter without the Otto Porter, without the junior. Look up the, well, it's only Otto Porter on these other ones. So you just tell it which other name to look up. Pretty straightforward. All right, so Kyra Lewis, Craig Porter, probably not relevant. Reggie Bullock is junior now, I think. This gets messy down here, but none of these guys are playing, so it doesn't really matter. There's Kyra Lewis. Come on. Why is that stuck? What is he? Is Reggie Bullock Jr.? I think this is the first year he's using that, right? All right. That helps. So getting into a little positional breakdown. Could be Travis says Luka's always capable of breaking the slate. Yeah, absolutely. Had about 20% Luka in the first build. Yeah, I wouldn't mind having about that. Could be Travis. You could be looking to go for. Oh, for Poe Degen. I was like, what? Oh, is PJ Tucker available? I had missed that. Thanks, Jeff. Where'd you catch that, Jeff? I haven't seen it. Oh, there it is. Just popped up in front of me. 4 minutes ago on Underdog. All right, cool. So that'll, let me make that change in the projection file right now. Thank you, Jeff. Good note. That's an important piece there. And clips. All right. Just give him 22-ish. He was playing 22. Let me give him 20. And then he's not going to pop up in what we're doing now. I just want to put him on the board so I don't forget to do it after the show. He's not going to project like crazy because he's, PJ Tucker. But if that leads to we've got the extra body so somebody can sit, then, maybe it picks up minutes, maybe it picks up a little bit of value. But it'll be an important piece of the puzzle for sure. All right, so let's get into this thing. Oh, Tiz is not getting the alerts for when you go live for some reason. You made it though. I'm glad you made it. I'm doing everything the same on my end. Were you previously getting alerts and now you're not? I haven't changed anything. I always send it out on Twitter as well. But yeah, scheduling goes through the same way. Make sure you're subscribed on the thingy down there. Hit the like button while we're at it. Yeah, I don't know, it says. Make sure to follow the @rotoscouts handle or jump into the Discord if you're not in there, and you'll always see the notifications there at least. So, looks like that scrolled up a little too much. It looks like it's actually somewhat visible now. It's just a lot of, can you imagine just flipping this on casually and just having no idea what's even on the screen? I know it's probably overwhelming just looking at it anyway, even though you guys have been here a little bit, but at least have some idea of what this might be. It's just, it looks like the phone book. Does anybody even remember phone books? They still make phone books? I haven't seen one in kind of a while. Anyway. We're sorted to players who qualify as point guards on DraftKings. So player by player, position by position, as we know, it gets a little bit clunky with the differentiated positions across sites, but we do the best we can. Luka is Luka at the top of the board. That kind of applies for SGA as well. 11.5 is pretty pricey. He falls into that same category, though, of just check out the point per dollar. It's relatively similar to the other guys who were priced in that kind of a tier. I probably prefer going all the way up to Luka for the additional handful of points, or I probably would dip down to like Steph, Donovan Mitchell, Dame. Any one of those guys I like a little bit better than SGA. But SGA is fantastic in a vacuum. 32% usage, a 1.53 FanDuel points per minute. Last time out, 32 minutes or 33 minutes, put up 52 fantasy points. But slightly negative ROI on both sites. Coming up only 0.9% of the time in FanDuel top ones. Less than that in DK top ones. Less than 1% of the time in DK winners. Getting a little bit more juice out of the next three guys on the list. Steph, 1.5 FanDuel points per minute, 1.6 DK points per minute. Point guard and shooting guard eligible for 10K on both sites. There's a lot to like about Steph Curry at that level. That's a game that could have a little bit of scoring as well. What's the line in that game? That's a 227.5 total. So that's important to talk about real quick, actually. It's something that I never remember to talk about on these shows. So we've got a couple just dead spots in terms of what Vegas is seeing. The Cavs and Knicks is very much one, just like last night. It's down to 210 for tonight. Should be the same lineups going on both sides. Actually, Karis LeVert didn't play last night. He might play tonight. But otherwise, similar looking game. 210 total. Knicks favored by 6. That's kind of a garbage spot. The Blazers and Pistons game, 216.5 is your next lowest. I don't love that game. Pistons favored by 4 in that one. Last I saw, Jalen Duren was questionable. We got to catch up on news on that one. There's been no changes with that, right? Just scrolling Twitter here real quick. Yeah, Jalen Duren didn't practice this morning. They had Bagley suspiciously involved. But we'll see what the update looks like on that. I hadn't taken him out yet. But that one's another one where, just given the point total, given the players involved, the nature of that game, I don't love the Blazers-Pistons game. But then we get some decent totals, a lot of mid-220s. And then we've got a couple biggies, 238.5 between Washington and Atlanta. Should be a ton of fantasy scoring there. And then two of the late games, the LA versus LA game is at 226. And then the Sacramento and Golden State game, 227.5, with Golden State favored by 7. I think there could be scoring in both late games. You've got 4 straight 222s leading up from Charlotte, Houston, Denver, Minnesota, Chicago, Dallas, Memphis, Utah. There's a lot of individuals in those games that are worth getting to. So I think a lot of the night is slanted toward the back half of the night in terms of where the plays really are. You get some value plays in that Brooklyn rotation in that early game against the Heat. And on the Heat side, actually. I don't love the Indy and Celtics game. It's a 235-point total, but the Celtics favored by 11.5. That's a pretty dramatic line. So those tend to, potentially wreak havoc on what the fourth quarter looks like, what the minutes end up at in the end. So it puts a bit of an artificial cap on that game for me, even with a healthy total. Because, on a slate like this, we're really not going down board all that much. So if I'm trimming a little bit off the top of the starters, off the primary players, and it doesn't really just fully land on one rotation guy, then it becomes a little bit more difficult. That said, the Boston rotation is a little bit of a shorter, more stable rotation, so maybe we'll uncover guys in that. But really, target games, that Washington and Atlanta one looks really juicy, and then I like the last two quite a bit, the LA game and the Sacramento and Golden State game. And we've got, as I said, we've got Steph up here. We had Sabonis as looking like one of the premium players on the entire slate. I'm sure we won't have to look far before finding some other guys from this game. Donovan Mitchell, presumably going to show us a little bit more than he did last night. Fell short of what his median projection is tonight last night. Just a 41.1. Only played 28 and change minutes. Got him projected around his minute average, which is 35, basically 36. I've got him at 36. He's putting up a decent score for that. 1.58 fantasy points per minute. 1.53 on the DK scale. Comes up, single digits, low single digits in terms of the winning lineups. Slightly negative ROI, but playable as a premium option. A lot of same type of options through Tyrese, Trae Young, LaMelo. A lot of these guys, basically who they are. Trae, arguably a little bit underpriced. That's why he's coming up a little bit here. 8,900 on DK. About the same. 88 on FanDuel, 89 on DK. Looks a little bit better on the FanDuel scale against the higher cap, but coming up a decent amount on the DK board as well. 1.96 positive ROI. Positive ROI on the FanDuel slate too. Trae's one to watch in that Washington-Atlanta game. A lot of potential upside there. 5+ in terms of the points per dollar. So really, compared to the guys above him, he's the first guy at 5 on both sites, which is kind of a key metric. Then you skip over LaMelo and you jump back up to 5 on Freddie VanVleet on both sites. He's coming up double-digit in the win rates, in the wins, and the top 1% on FanDuel. Basically double digits on the DK slate as well for 7,400, 7,500 on the FanDuel slate. Positive ROI option on both sites as well. So Freddie VanVleet, yes. Some Trae Young, yes. DeJounte, Tyler Hero just kind of look like also ran type options. Any of these guys that, again, when we're talking about these high mid 30s guys for these fair prices, they pop to 4 and change above, let's say 4.5 in the points per dollar. You're fine. Those are your mix and match type guys. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George both will play tonight. So that's a plus. That'll be a fun game. So any of these guys, as I was saying, any of your Tyler Heroes, there's nothing wrong with sticking Tyler Hero into a lineup if you've got 79 on FanDuel, if you've got 75 on DK. He's just not popping up to be a priority item. He is Tyler Hero. He's got upside for 38 minutes, significant fantasy contributions if his shot is falling. That said, a 1.0 fantasy point per minute player on FanDuel, a 1.04 on DK. He's not mispriced. He's just Tyler Hero. Jordan Poole showing a little bit of value, popping up above 5 in the points per dollar on FanDuel. Double-digit returns in the top lineups. Slightly negative ROI. Slightly positive ROI. Actually, decently positive ROI on the DK board, even though he's coming up less. 7,900 over there. Point guard, shooting guard. It's a weird one. I'm not really sure why he'd be popping up. I guess he's super low owned because he's a little bit expensive there. Maybe that's what's causing that. I would venture to guess. I don't have that handy. I would have checked that ownership number, but I already erased it because I have to create the upload file and then move it over and then put the FanDuel stuff back. Otherwise, later on after the show, when I'm building stuff, I'll be accidentally using DK data for FanDuel, and that won't go well. I know myself well. I have to anticipate these things. Dropping a little bit further down the board, just in the interest of time, Bones Highland, who I mentioned at the top of the show, one of our top, if not the top, points per dollar options at the position. Yeah, it's going to be your top points per dollar option at the position. Point guard only on both sites. 4,700 over on FanDuel, 5,100 on the DK slate. Came in last night, played 32 minutes, put up 23.5 points. Wasn't quite enough. Model liked him right around the same number once it was all said and done after he was announced as a starter last night. I like his chances to get to around this number. I don't know how much ceiling we've got, crazy ceiling beyond that, but we've seen Bones Highland succeed. It's just, does he get chewed up by who he's playing with in that rotation? So, good player, playing with a lot of heavy usage guys, might not get his. But that said, coming up nearly 40% of the time in top lineups on FanDuel, a 0.21 ROI. Not sure why he wouldn't come up in the top 1 on DK. That doesn't really make sense. Why are all these guys at 0? Hold on. It's 25. understand why that would be a 0. Oh, weird. Hang on. I forgot we're filtered. It's going to take a sec. Welcome to watching this little wheel spin with Terry McBride. All right. Let me take the positional filter off real quick and actually get these. I guess that formula didn't copy all the way down. What? That's supposed to have... Why is Lively not coming up? All right. Whatever. Those guys should be covered. We'll deal with the cosmetics later. All right. Back to Bones. There he is. So 25% of the time for Bones in the top 1% on DK, 30+% in the winning lineups. A pretty solid ROI option. I think Bones is going to be just one of those plug and play, chalky but worthwhile value type guys. That said, it is a deep slate. There are a lot of options. He doesn't exactly have a clear path to a ceiling score. He's just got a pretty decent path to a solid, good point per dollar score. Ben Simmons popping into the FanDuel lineups, top lineups a pretty decent amount of the time. DK as well. For 6,800, there's a lot of talent. There's a lot of multi-category ability there. I know nobody likes Ben Simmons, but I mean, point guard small forward, point guard power forward, interesting eligibility. You can move him into, move him around the lineup, build differentiated lineups with him. For only 7,100, 1.22 FanDuel points per minute this year, 1.20 DK points per minute this year, playing 30 minutes a night. There's nothing wrong with Ben Simmons at these prices. Happy to go there. D'Lo should get plenty of run in the Lakers rotation. 14% of the time in the top 1% on FanDuel. Slightly negative in the ROI. 25% top 1% lineups on the DK slate. Only 6,100 over there. Point guard and shooting guard. 5.37 in the point per minute. D'Lo's got more value on DK. I like that option, D'Angelo Russell on the DK slate from down here. High ceiling guy to find at that kind of a price down at this level. THT, if you want to go that route, another guy who shows a lot of value on the DK slate, coming up 20% of the time roughly in the top lineups. Only 4,900 over there. He costs 5,800 on FanDuel, shooting guard, small forward. Not completely without value, but not showing nearly the value he does on the other side, coming up in the low single digits in the top lineups. I'm kind of happy about that. I don't love going to THT. 4.71 points per minute versus, or points per dollar versus 5.67. That's a pretty tremendous difference. Another guy like that down the bottom of the board here. Who's this? Killian Hayes? Killian Hayes, you can have him on DK. 5,100 on FanDuel. He comes up, that's a 5 point per dollar. That's playable. 0.8% of the time in the top 1%, 1.29 in the winners. Slightly positive ROI. I don't love the Killian Hayes option, though. It's another guy where if I book 25 DK points for 4,500, that's fine, but there's not much ceiling beyond that for a 0.78 DK points per minute player. It's not great. That's why he's only in these winning lineups a handful of the times. I would venture to guess that his cash number is better than his top 1%, his winner number, because he's a reasonable play to cash. He's cheap enough that he'll give you this 25 and it'll put you at the bottom of the cashing list. So I think he'd look better if we were looking at those numbers. Who else is important that we haven't talked about? Drew certainly could give you value out of that Boston rotation. Just tons and tons of pieces there, but that is a very high total in that game. Like I said, I just don't love what the fourth quarter might do to those Boston options. if they lose minutes because they're lighting up Indy by 20 points, then everybody takes a little bit of a haircut. So it's just not my favorite spot to sink money. But that said, Drew at 6,900 is pretty inexpensive. 6,800 on DK, giving us 0.97 FanDuel points per minute, 0.94 DK points per minute. In an overall scoring sense, probably the guy who took the biggest or made the biggest fantasy point scoring sacrifice overall in that group. I think he's probably the fourth man in out of that Boston core as far as my lineups go, but not a bad option by any means. Double-digit returns in the top lineups on both sites, pushing 20% in the top 1% on FanDuel, and a player with a ceiling. Drew could go for 50 today. CJ, solid also ran option, showing a little bit more value on the DK board for 7,200. Point guard only, 10+% in the top lineups, low single digits on FanDuel. Jalen Brunson, don't like that game at all, but he's perfectly playable in a I'm Jalen Brunson kind of a sense. I'm a fantasy point per minute player. And there's a lot of mix and match types in here. But if you compare the points per dollar to the returns, like Brogdon is definitely interesting from the Sims. Bruce Brown may be slightly playable on the other side of that Indy-Boston matchup. And then you get into a lot of guys outside of Derek White, who looks good there in that same game. A lot of low single-digit guys, even from these mid-fours point per dollar types, because we're down into the dregs. We're down into the spot where, yeah, Jaden Ivey could come out, or Colin Sexton could come out and give you around 20. Davian Mitchell, I know he's going to get minutes tonight. This is a 29-minute projection. He's not a big-time player. He's a half a fantasy point per minute this year. He was changed like that last year. So guys like this, they don't put a ton of ceiling on these scores. They're just going to give you around what their median is most nights, even if they get the minutes. So they don't really tend to pop through the top lineups. They're just okay filler. I guess these inexpensive guys from this Boston game are going to be a little bit more important. I kind of... So if we're looking at the full game here, let's just look at guys that are actually playing. Let's look a little bit cleaner. Just to talk this one through real quick, since I was kind of dismissive about it, but it does have a really big total. Out of the high-end guys, KP's the one that's popping through at 8,500 on FanDuel, center and power forward eligible. That's a very nice number for KP. Same story on DK, power forward and center for 82. I'm assuming we've just got slightly better options for Jalen and Jason Tatum. I wouldn't take either one of them out of my lineups, though. If I saw a lineup that had Tatum, if I saw a lineup as I'm going through that had Jaylen Brown, or several in a row that had either one of those players, I have no issues with that whatsoever. 1.19 FanDuel points per minute for Jalen, 1.31 for Jason Tatum. Jalen, in 31 minutes the other night, put up 58.2 FanDuel points. I rest my case. You can absolutely play Jaylen Brown. So yeah, KP and Drew, as far as the Sims are seeing, and then a little bit of Derek White as well, and more so on FanDuel. 5,700 for him on FanDuel, slightly cheaper against the higher cap, gives him a decent amount of value. Not without value on DK, but definitely at 30% in the top 1%ers, coming up pretty aggressively more often on the FanDuel slate. Outside of those guys, though, I mean, Horford doesn't look like any kind of priority by any means. The bench guys on Boston, nobody sees enough time or, does enough to really warrant attention. And then everybody on the other side, this is where I get concerned. Everybody on this side, we're talking about single-digit returns in the top lineups. Middling to, Tyrese is obviously, a star, but only a 45-point projection to top it off, and then a lot of just middling type projections. I just don't know that Indy keeps pace. Again, it's an 11.5 point spread. If all these guys, I mean, if they're blowing it up and Tatum plays 30 minutes instead of 35. That gives him a monster haircut when he's already not looking great. Same thing with Jalen. You're paying less for Jalen, so it's a little bit less impactful. Tatum's the one that could be really damaged because he's 10-6, 10-3. That said, he's playing 36 minutes a night, but he only went 27 the last time out. What happened there? How much did they win that game by? That was so that's actually kind of a good example. That was their game 2 nights ago. They won 126-107. Jason Tatum literally did not see the floor in the fourth quarter. Tatum, Brown, and Porzingis all sat the fourth quarter. So did Derek White, so did Drew Holiday. If that happens tonight, that damages Tatum most specifically, but that could potentially cap the upside in a game that has a pretty beefy total. Bit of a danger spot for sure. Anyway, let's get off this game. Keep on moving. I'll just leave it with the guys who are actually playing. That probably makes more sense anyway. That didn't work. Aha. Apologies for all the clicking, guys. Just a lot to jump around to. All right. Tiz makes a good point. Yeah, if Hallie doesn't go, that opens up some value plays on the Indy side. So that's one to watch. I just feel like Hallie's playing. It's nothing that I have like a specific, just, at this point we're just choosing vibes, and my vibe is Hallie's going. But if he doesn't go, then we obviously have a couple value plays that open up. I don't see any updates on him. Terrence Mann ruled out. Okay. James Harden won't make clear. We knew that. PJ Tucker. All right. The PJ Tucker news changed. So PJ Tucker's status is now hopeful to make his Clippers debut. Availability is contingent on all players in the trade on both sides passing their physicals. So that trade still hasn't gone through. I would not be completely running off to put PJ Tucker into my lineups just yet. No news on Hallie yet, though. Yep. Oh, Larry just pointed that out in chat. Thanks, Larry. And Tiz pointed that out before, too. You guys are so ahead of the game. Nice work, everybody. Yeah, Chuck, that's kind of where I'm at, right? It just I feel like almost every time we get Halliburton questionable, he's out there. It's kind of like Donovan Mitchell when he tweets whatever that message was that Underdog put up last night. It was something like the last 69 out of the last 70 times that he had tweeted like "Let's go Cavs" or whatever. He was out there when questioned. So that was the sign for me. I have no specific thing to point to with Halliburton, except for just seems like he plays through more often than most. I'm not putting PJ Tucker in my lineup regardless. Yeah, that's always a sound strategy. Just don't play PJ Tucker anyway. There's like a 5% usage rate. All right, let's dig through this. We've talked about a bunch of these guys already, so I'm going to try and kind of zero in on some guys that are shooting guard only or small forward and shooting guard. There's a fair amount that we haven't hit on. We did touch on Desmond Bane briefly before when we were talking about everybody, but just sorted to the position, you can really see his value. Popping into the 30s in terms of the top 1% on FanDuel, basically 30% in the top in the winners. Similar story on DK. Massive points per dollar on both sites. 87-85 for a player who's putting up 1.18 FanDuel points per minute, 1.20 DK points per minute. getting 35 minutes a night. Played 37.5 the last time out. Put up 48.7 FanDuel points. Plenty of opportunity for Des Bane there. Mitchell, we touched on briefly. Sees major usage when there's no Darius Garland in the lineup with him, which is the case again. But just that game environment, that game total, I didn't like it yesterday. I don't like it today. These two teams just play grindy, defensively oriented, slow-paced, slugfest type games. So out of everybody in that game, he's got the clearest path to a big fantasy score. He's got the clearest, the highest level of ability, let's say. But I'm not rushing off to get him. 1% in the top lineups on both sites. Negative ROI on both sites by a little bit. Ingram, last I saw, is still questionable. Small forward only on the FanDuel slate, but shooting guard small forward on DK. Only kind of relevant. Low single digits on FanDuel as far as the top lineups go, but is a positive ROI play over there. I imagine that's just on the back of absolutely no ownership. It's probably just projected for like nothing in terms of the ownership. Same story on DK. But he is coming up a little bit more in the top lineups on DK at the 8,000 price. A little bit better in the points per dollar. Obviously, just a solid player if he's out there. You can go to him. But I consider him a little bit more of just a mix-in player. And I would imagine that if he's confirmed in and he gets a little bit of ownership, a little bit of an ownership uptick, the ROI number probably changes more to this kind of a territory. Anthony Edwards, another guy. A lot of guys with fairly low marks in the sim results. A couple little bit better on the DK board. Jalen looks a little bit better on DK. Who's that? DeJounte? Yeah, DeJounte Murray looks a little bit better on DK. But really, you got to go down board a little bit till you get down to Drew, who we talked about. Jordan Poole, at least on FanDuel, into the teens. He doesn't look as good on DK. He's 79 over there versus 72 on FanDuel. That's a pretty major price difference. 5 plus points per dollar versus a 4.85. 1.06 FanDuel points per minute for Poole. 30.9% usage rate. And a 48.1% true shooting rate. He's hilarious. Never saw a shot he didn't like. 14.8 assist rate. I knew that true shooting was going to be low. I didn't think it would be quite that low. Zach LaVine. Looks like Zach LaVine comes up a decent amount of the time. This is highly playable. Higher single digits on both sites. 7,600 across the board, shooting guard and small forward, multi-position eligible. There's a ceiling on Zach LaVine for sure. Hasn't been at that level yet this year. 0.89 FanDuel points per minute, 0.96 on the DK scale. 35.9 minutes last time out, so basically playing 36 minutes. Put up just 29.5 FanDuel points. But we know that Zach LaVine has ceiling beyond that. Derek White, we touched on when we were talking Boston. Jalen Green, pretty decent amount of value on FanDuel, and even more, pretty explosive on the DK slate. Picking up a lot of value on DK, wow. 6,100 over there versus 6,600 on FanDuel. You get multi-position on him on FanDuel at shooting guard, point guard. Only 0.73 FanDuel points per minute so far, 0.77 DK points per minute, but 35% of the time, that shouldn't be ignored. Coming up in the top lineups basically 35% of the time. Definitely going to be in play as an option over on DK. What is his... Bear with me while this loads. I had to check what his ownership looks like. Houston's got... let's see, I've got him in for 35 minutes. Last time out, played 38. Where's his ownership? What the hell is that? Sometimes the whole building shakes when a big truck goes by outside. I think a garbage truck or something just went by. The entire apartment above me felt like it shifted out by 2 feet. All right, Houston. There they are. Yeah, 20+% ownership projected. That makes sense. That's why that ROI number was lower. One of the higher guys on... they've got... Yeah, Jalen Green on DK with all that value that he's showing is the fourth highest projected ownership, fourth most highly owned player in ownership projections that are in this sim. So that's why we're seeing he's coming up 35% of the time in the top lineups, but it's technically a negative 0.1% ROI because he's so popular. But he just looks more like a critical piece, one of the pieces of good chalk that just books a lineup square. Than somebody you want to get away from. It's just the nature of how basketball works with DFS. A lot of guys like this, you don't sweat the popularity. You just take just plug them into the square, take the points, use it as a way to lever up to other spots when somebody looks that good for points per dollar. Especially from the mid-range, 6,100. It's not like we're talking about a flat 3% or a flat $3,000 guy or something like that. To be at 61 and showing that extreme amount of value, pushing almost a 6 in terms of the points per dollar, pretty solid spot. At the same time, Jordan Clarkson looks just as good, if not a little bit better. 32% of the time in the top lineups. He's a 0.78 DK points per minute guy, but he only costs 5,600 at the same position, coming up at a 6.21 points per minute or points per dollar. I would have no issue with both of those guys in the same lineup in the guard spots. I imagine Clarkson is pretty popular as well here. Further down the board, pretty popular. That's why he pops to a slightly positive ROI. But he's still, call it your like 10th, 12th most highly projected player as far as ownership goes. But again, it's just looking like a good piece of mid-range value chalk. We've not touched on a lot of same type guys through here. Some decent scores, though. We talked about D'Lo. Marcus Smart at 7,100. Point guard, shooting guard on FanDuel. Point guard, shooting guard on both sites. Not irrelevant. Another piece of the puzzle in that Memphis rotation. Negative ROI on both sites, but popping up a fair amount of the time in winning lineups. Scoot Henderson on the other side of that game. One of the more appealing pieces on Portland, despite his underperformance so far, and he's dramatically underperforming expectations so far. But he's out there. He's getting 30 minutes a night. Played 34 the last time out. Put up 28 fantasy points, which is far less than ideal. He's putting up 0.54 FanDuel points per minute so far on 21% usage, 0.58 DK points so far. But the points per dollar, I mean, that underperformance has his salary pretty low. And with all the pedigree that the kid's coming into the league with, there's got to be some ceiling games coming if he keeps getting those minutes. Right now, a 37% true shooting rate. You got to expect that that's going to have some positive regression in it. 20% assist rate is solid. So there's got to be upside lurking in this kid unless he's a total bust. He's was not projected to be a 0.5 fantasy point per minute player. Coming up a decent amount of the time in the Sims with a 28-point projection for the money. It's not a bad point per dollar option. One of the more appealing players on the Portland side there. Slightly more so than the more expensive Shaedon Sharpe, in my opinion, especially given where he's coming up on the FanDuel slate anyway. On DK, it's the opposite. DK, you're getting Shaedon Sharpe a decent amount more. 14% of the time in the top 1%, 11% in the winners, and Scoot is only in the low 1% range. 5,800 for him over there, 5,300 slate at point guard only. So just getting the value pricing at the point guard position gives them a little bit of value on FanDuel. Shaedon Sharpe, definitely your DK option from the Blazers, though. But again, I don't really love that game. I don't really love kind of either side. if you're chasing the narrative that Portland is going to hang in, then both of those players are probably going to need to do some work tonight against the Celtics. Ryan S., what's going on, bud? I still haven't built out a handy way to look at that, but I'll try and eyeball it anyway. Player props, see what there is. But I haven't put the board together where I can just like look at it conveniently yet. We'll get there. DK pricing is so shit. Everyone is under 5K or above 9K and 30 guys at 3K who can get their bit hyperbolic. Yeah, DK's been a bit user-friendly, let's say, of late. To Chuck's point, I mean, yeah, there's just a lot of... That's why I was saying, it's a lot of same with a lot of these plays. You get that on big slates, but it seems exaggerated on this one. Down through here, nobody really to talk about in a lot of sub ones, a lot of zeros. Gary Trent, barely sub 5%. Nobody really relevant from that group on the DK slate, but you do have $4,600 Bogdan in that Washington and Atlanta game. 26-minute projection, 5,100 on FanDuel, not really showing much relevance, but pops up a decent amount for 4,600 on DK. Good enough player, 1.02 DK points a minute for 4,600 in 26 minutes in a very highly total game. That could be a little bit interesting as a sneak-in kind of an option. Lonnie Walker, I mentioned earlier, just in that depleted Nets rotation. The idea that he's going to see plenty of minutes. Got him projected at 30. Lonnie came out and played what he... I've got it on that board. I didn't need to switch files, but since I'm looking at it, 29 minutes the last time. I've got him slightly, couple fewer minutes lower than across town. So you might see him at even bigger numbers in certain spots. But he's showing a decent amount of value for 4,600 on the FanDuel slate, 4,800 on DK. Basically 30% of the time in top ones, 25% of the time in winners. 30% plus in both categories on the FanDuel slate. Just another guy, fairly decent piece of value chalk. Yeah, I mean, there's pretty cut and dry approach to some of these value guys. Like you could go Lonnie Walker. Dylan Brooks I didn't even touch on. Dylan Brooks is also showing some value there. But I was going to say Walker, Clarkson, Green. That's three interesting spots. Two shooting guard only guys, and then you stick Walker at small forward. Excuse me. Yeah, Walker down here. Dylan Brooks, problematic just because he's annoying to play, but he's showing value. Coming up nearly 40% of the time, 37.4% of the time in top ones, 30+% in winners. 0.67 FanDuel points per minute so far. He's only 4,600. We know there's a ceiling score there. Just a frustrating player to roster, but I think he's valuable. I think he's given the price, given the minutes in that Houston rotation, there's going to be an upside game coming. But again, very, very frustrating player to roster. 25% in top lineups and on the DK slate. Let's move on from the guards. Let's talk about some of the forwards. I'm just going to put forward together. Does that get everybody? Yeah. Just putting all the forwards together in the interest of time. We're already an hour in. I said it was going to be done by 5. Boy. Giannis is Giannis. Tatum and Zinger we talked about off the top. Just the only concerns with those two guys, again, are the potential shortened fourth quarter. If you missed it before, none of Jaylen Brown, Kristaps Porzingis, Jason Tatum, or Drew Holiday played at all in the fourth quarter in their 20-point victory the other day. And they're favored by 11.5 today. That concerns me about what the ceilings look like for both of these players. Zinger's the one who projects out better in the Sims. Tatum's the one slightly ahead in terms of the raw point projection. That said, it's a 35-minute projection versus a 32. Decent amount of value for Pascal Siakam. Solid number in the points per dollar scale. Very nice ROI, so he's not getting a lot of ownership attention. Huge ROI number. That's got to be the highest individual ROI on DK. Nope, somebody's higher. Who's at 9.4? The highest individual ROI is actually Klay Thompson, who we didn't talk about at the shooting guard position. Interesting. 0.71% in the top ones. Not exactly sure how these numbers jibe together sometimes. 4.91 is a solid point per dollar play for 7,100. 0.89 DK points per minute so far this year. 0.83 FanDuel points per minute. Coming up on both sites a fair amount of the time. More frequently in the winning lineups on the FanDuel slate for 5,800. That's a big piece of value, actually. 5,800 for Klay Thompson is cheap. 5.5 plus points per dollar. Coming up 11% of the time in one percenters, 15% of the time in winners, with a positive ROI and a solid positive ROI there. I'm not really fully grasping how he's coming up with that ROI number on the DK slate. 7,100 though, that's a major price difference between the two sites. Kind of stunning. But anyway, Pascal Siakam was the guy that we were talking about there. Major source of value on both sites potentially. Kind of like that option. Siakam's only given us 0.83 FanDuel points per minute, 0.87 on the DK board so far this year, but out there playing 37 minutes a night. We know he's got 40-minute potential on any given slate. Not the same coaching staff anymore, but the player can go out there and do it. So if they need him to, I have no issues with saying that Pascal can be out there for that much time. That said, projecting him at is slightly below his average at 36 minutes, and he looks very, very good. So I don't mind that option at all. What's his ownership looking like? Toronto, where are you? There you are, first game. Yeah, that would help the old ROI. Sub 1% ownership. That is an interesting option. Power forward only on FanDuel at 79. Power forward and center on DK at 92. That's why he's not popular over there. That's another big price discrepancy. Shocking. LeBron, this version of LeBron, 9,700 on FanDuel, looks fine. Totally playable, but not really a high priority. On DK at 91, more playable. 10.4% of the time in the top 1%. 8% of the time in the winners. Negative 1.6 on the ROI scale, but a playable part. He's kind of a tweener now between, like, he's not one of the top mid-range guys, and he's not really the premium luxury type guy. He's kind of stuck as, at the bottom of that luxury list, I guess. He's like a Lexus now, right? He used to be like whatever the fanciest version of a Mercedes or a Tesla or whatever is. And now he's like a Lexus, where it's like, yeah, that's a nice car, but really it comes off the same line as a Toyota. It's really just a fancy Toyota. Not in real life. In real life, he's still one of the top players in the NBA. He's the best or second best of all time, depending on your opinion. But for fantasy, for DFS purposes, he's more like Lexus level now. He's not the Benz. He's not the extreme luxury car anymore. Certainly not the Ferrari. I think we've extended that analogy as far as we need to. Larry Markkinen, pretty solid. Double-digit returns in top lineups on both sites. Looks a little better on DK for 84. A little bit better points per dollar scale over there. Jaren Jackson has been looking great to start the season in terms of where he projects out on basically every slate we've played so far. In 4 games, he's given us 1.21 FanDuel points per minute, 1.17 DK points per minute, 32 minutes a night. Last time out, he played 33 and change, put up 51 FanDuel points. Has that kind of upside any given slate. That's only a few points beyond where we've got him projected. I do feel like there's upwards to 58, 60 in terms of FanDuel scoring. So we've got that kind of range from Triple J. I like him for the money. Comes up a decent amount of time in the Sims on both sites. And then you hit a fair amount of single-digit guys on both sites. Well, actually, no. On the FanDuel slate, there's 3 guys right here. Jimmy Butler, Kawhi Leonard, Zion Williamson. 3 somewhat relevant names. 8,700, 8,200, 7,800. They're not totally irrelevant on DK by any means. Any one of those guys qualifies as if you've got him in your lineup, you're perfectly fine. No need to take him out of your lineup or make changes. It's just they're not showing crazy, need to prioritize. Jimmy looks the best out of the group on the DK slate. But on FanDuel, they're all coming up mid-teens, double digits returns in top lineup. So any one of them, any 2 of them together, perfectly reasonable options over there / not top priorities, but guys that should be fairly firmly in the mix at your forward spots. Multi-position on both Jimmy and Kawhi. Zion just a power forward. On DK, you get Zion at power forward or center. So far this season, 1.07 FanDuel points per minute, 1.11 DK. 30.5 fantasy points in 30 minutes last time out. It's about what we're getting from Zion right now. It's just not expensive. 7,800 on FanDuel is fine. 8,800 on DK, a little bit more challenging. That's why the numbers look the way they do. Then another little pocket of single digits until we get down to Kyle Kuzma, who nobody really loves to play Kyle Kuzma, but he is a 1.23 FanDuel points per minute player this year, 1.25 DK. Fairly priced, 74.75. Multi-position on FanDuel gives him a little bit of potential. Slightly less in terms of the top lineup appearances on DK because he's power forward only. I feel like this difference is probably just caused by that multi-position eligibility, but a playable part of the puzzle on both sides. Oh, do they pass their physicals? Tiz is updating. We can now play PJ Tucker because everybody, I guess, passed their physicals. I mean, all those guys were just playing at the beginning of the week, or the end of last week, rather. So it makes sense that everybody passed their physical. But you do run into shit sometimes where it's, the one team doctor wasn't concerned about it, and then the other team doctor feels a guy's MCL for the first time and freaks out, and all of a sudden the trade's off. But yeah, it didn't seem like we were going to run into that challenge today. But again, none of us, I don't think, are rushing out to play PJ Tucker. In the, let's see. I gave him a 20-minute projection before when I just made when I dropped them in so that I would make sure to have him, and he's projected for fewer than 10 fantasy points. PJ Tucker, ladies and gentlemen. A lot of playable parts through the middle here on both of these sites. A lot of, mid-teens, double-digit type guys. 5+ points per dollar. Mid-teens in the top lineups. Looking for the key values. Jalen Johnson for 5,400 on DK, coming up 36.2% of the time in the top 30% of the time in winners. A 30-point projection for that kind of money at power forward, pretty solid. 1.05 fantasy points per minute on DK so far this season. Playing 30 minutes a night, 33 and a third, or 33.1. 33 and a third. Still baseball mode. 33.1 minutes last time out gave us 26.5 fantasy points. But more ceiling than that on the right night. Small forward and power forward on FanDuel. A little bit of flexibility. Definitely showing value there. But for the money, a better buy on DK. Harrison Barnes, if you're looking down that way. I've only rarely ever succeeded with Harrison Barnes, but he's showing a little bit on FanDuel for 5,200. A lot less so on DK. Solid chunk of value here. Who's this? Josh Green. Shooting guard on FanDuel. Small forward and power forward on DK. Coming up is a pretty solid chunk of value on both sites. 34-minute projection. 4,500. Puts him in a very solid points per dollar number on FanDuel. Same thing on DK. At 4,300 on DK. 6+ points per dollar. One of the better just raw points per dollar options at the position. Coming up 25% of the time in top 1%ers. Only a 0.63 DK point per minute player. So it's another spot where we're probably just booking around the median projection for the money. And you got to be able to lever up to guys who will crack through to a ceiling score, a 7-8x score, 2.5 standard deviation type thing. No. I looked down at my phone and I had 30-something text messages, but it's just my idiot friends on our group text going off about some nonsense. Other pieces. Royce O'Neal, nobody wants to do that again. Showing a little bit of value on FanDuel for sure. 4,300 small forward, power forward, 30-minute projection. That's going to get him there, but not an option that I really like that much. 0.67 FanDuel points per minute so far, 0.7 on the DK slate. There's better options. It's just such a deep slate that you don't need to go down to a lot of these. All right, he's going to give me 20 points and not much else. And that's kind of the bucket that Royce O'Neal falls into most nights. Jay Crowder, similar type guy down here. No real love for that play. A lot of these guys that look okay on short slates and have looked okay on short slates so far this season just fall by the wayside with all this depth. Derek Jones picking up some minutes in that Dallas rotation. No Kyrie tonight for them. Spread out some of those minutes. But 26 minutes, not really showing a ton on FanDuel. The points per dollar is fine, but not really coming up a ton in Sims or anything. On DK, not really landing crazy in Sims, but again, points per dollar for 34. If you just need a cheap guy who's going to maybe see 20 and change plus minutes, not completely awful. Low priority in terms of value plays though. I'd rather land here around the 4,000, the mid 4,000 guys who are landing in the optimal lineups, mid 20s into the 30s. Up top, did we miss anybody up top that's showing a lot of value? Touched on Kuzma. Mobley didn't do much after talking his ass off before last night's game. Let's see if he can live up to his own expectations tonight, but doesn't look great. Talked about these three guys. I think it's basically everybody at the forward spots. Leaves us with center. Always critical. Nobody above 20% on the DK board. Top man in terms of the Sims looks like Zinger, but we've talked about him 5 or 6 times already on this show. After him, 16% of the time, it's Domantas Sabonis. Another 16% of the time, it's Triple J, who we talked about already. Zeroing in on Sabonis, 36-minute projection. Looks rock solid, a 1.44 FanDuel point per minute player. 1.43 on the DK slate. Just looking here. We have Sabonis when there's no De'Aaron Fox. His assist rate goes up a little bit. He's a very, very good distributor of the ball at the as a big man. So I like Sabonis a lot. I like him to pick up some additional fantasy scoring tonight beyond his usual 1.44. It's giving him a very, very solid projection on the DK slate. 4.7 in terms of the points per dollar. 4.85 on the FanDuel scale points per dollar. So as far as just eyeballing it from that perspective, doesn't really pop off the page. But just in terms of raw scoring as one of the luxury item pay-up options, multi-position eligible also on FanDuel helps, lands in the Sims a pretty strong amount of the time. One of the better options on the board. So really, I mean, DK in our winners and our top ones, let's call it in the top ones, 53% goes to those guys. Now, only Sabonis is a center only player there. Both of these guys get power forward. So we're talking about 300%? So 50% of 300% if you want to add, all three positions. But a decent chunk of the big man exposure or the big man winning lineup plays are across those three guys on the DK board. Zinger's the one I'm most concerned about. I think Triple J and DeMonis get there a little bit more securely. And then you can go downboard a little bit. Isaiah Stewart has power forward and center eligibility, coming up in the 12.1% of the time in the top 14% of the time in winners. After him, nobody on DK that has center eligibility comes up more than 10% of the time. Yep, excuse me, I'm a liar. PJ Washington also does. Right there. After PJ, so that's PJ and Isaiah Stewart downboard for 5,800 and 5,400 for those two, or guys up from the top. So I think in terms of where you want to get your value options, where you want to get your spend up options, it's at least the most stark spot on DK. It's a lot more convoluted on FanDuel, where you've got a lot of guys popping into double digits, or at least high decent single digits. You only get the one bite at the apple at center. You've got relatively fewer guys with the multi-position power forward eligibility. So that makes it even more stark. On DK, it's really like each of Sabonis. I guess Porzingis, I have to consider that I like him at this point, given how much he's come up on this in this show. And then Jaren Jackson. Any of these guys through the middle are perfectly playable. Cat coming up 8% of the time. 0.66 ROI. He's a 1.05 FanDuel DK point per minute player. Power forward and center eligible for 8,200. Zion's on this list. Vooch. Certainly not going to say anybody's making a mistake playing Bam. Miles Turner. Ayton had a nearly 50-point game. 50 fantasy point game in 32 minutes the other night. I think that was his best game of the season, if I'm remembering correctly. Walker Kessler down here, not showing up a ton in the Sims, but another guy with a clear ceiling for 5,800. 64 on the DK on the FanDuel slate. I like him a little bit better for the cheaper price on DK. But again, not coming up like crazy in the Sims. So these guys become a lot more dart throwish. Any one of them is easily playable. They're all good fantasy point per minute. Look at all the solid fantasy point per minute performers through these positions at the top. But if things go according to plan, it's somewhat clear where the action is. FanDuel, like I said, you're a little bit more mixed up. You've got Pascal lurking there, of course. No center eligibility on him. Jokic at the top. I didn't mean to leave him out of the DK conversation, by the way. Obviously, he's extremely, extremely playable. Just like I said with Luka at the top of the show. Any given slate, you can absolutely just hammer Jokic and put him into your lineups. You can see the impact that his salary and everything has, but the raw scoring, the raw potential, and the absolute monster ceiling that he possesses, any given slate could just go out there and win the slate. It's just a matter of how much does his salary diminish the rest of your lineup. Giannis, similar. He's a little bit less expensive, so he pops into lineups a little bit more. He's power forward versus center also on the FanDuel slate, so you get two slots to put him into. Power forward and center on DK. A little bit of MPE over there is nice, but a little bit less of a frequent appearer in the top lineups because he costs $11,000 for the MPE over there. AD, another one of those guys you can just absolutely play. AD is a 1.53 fantasy point per minute player, 1.46 on DK. A little bit more ROI on the FanDuel slate. He's negative on both, but he's negative 2.5 on DK, 1.9 on FanDuel. You get the additional stocks big man upside on the FanDuel slate. Last time out, 38.2 minutes, 67.3 FanDuel points. Not bad at all for your 11-6. But again, mid single digits returns in sims on both sides. Julius Randle really hasn't been a priority. Maybe will become more of a priority as his price drops a little bit. 1.08 FanDuel points per minute, 1.15 on DK. It's not like he's been bad. Part of the problem just landed on right here. 32% from 3 so far. Making 2 a game, taking 6+. Only 30, there's your problem. 38.2% true shooting so far. What I love about Randle, and I mentioned it on one of the first shows we did for the year though, he's a good rebounder and he's a very good assist man. He's an underrated facilitator as a big man. So when you get Randle on the right night, where the shot's falling, the assists are getting chalked up, he becomes a nice player. RJ Barrett's questionable in that Knicks rotation. Potentially just gives Julius a little bit more to do. It's not going to really impact his minutes, but potentially would give him a little bit more to do. Not that RJ is a big facilitator, but they'll lean into Julius a little bit more as a scorer. I would imagine you'd see more minutes for Hart, probably a couple more for DiVincenzo downstream as we distribute those minutes around. IQ probably picks up some minutes. We'll see what happens with RJ, but Julius is not uninteresting, but he's not really coming through in terms of the sims. Sub 5 on FanDuel in terms of points per dollar on DK. 5+ looks a little bit better in terms of just raw points per dollar. But not really somebody who's like cracking through as a super high priority in terms of the sim results. Şengün, playable, looks like Şengün. Vooch, same thing. Pirtle, 13% in winners on FanDuel. That's a little bit interesting for 5,900. 0.92 FanDuel points per minute. Doesn't look quite as good on DK. Playable, but not really a high priority on DK. But given that he's pushing about 10%, slightly below 10%, and 10+ in terms of the very top lineups, it's not bad. 5.8, is that our top point per dollar? I think it is. Yeah. Pirtle is the top point per dollar center on the FanDuel slate at 5,900. 28 minutes, 34.3. So we're ahead of what he's produced so far this season. What was he last year? You know what? I got it bookmarked right here. Let this load. Since the beginning of last year, and the reason I'm not concerned about where that projection is versus his low point per dollar this year, since the beginning of last year, Pirtle is a 1.16 FanDuel point per minute player, 1.12 DK points per minute. So that justifies to me this projection over 28 minutes. Technically, it's a little bit low, I think, doing quick math. But obviously at 0.92, it looks a little bit off. But plenty of justification historically for Pirtle being perfectly fine at that number and being a pretty good looking point per dollar play on the FanDuel slate. And honestly on DK as well, even though he's not coming up quite as much in the sims because we've got just such clear options up at the top in the sims, he's definitely a playable part over here. And in terms of raw points per dollar, again, looks very strong. Is he the highest on DK as well? He is. Highest point per dollar rate on both sites, Jakob Pirtle. Not a terrible option. Man, am I going to get overloaded with big men from Toronto? Because I like Siakam and I like Pirtle. That becomes how much do you like them together, which is not a ton. I don't know that that's something I make a rule for, but I don't know that it's something I want a ton of. Both Pascal Siakam and Jakob Poeltl in the lineup. Might be one to look out for. I don't know what I haven't looked up any other correlation numbers or anything, but might be one to check or to keep an eye out for. Stochastic doesn't like Sabonis. Josh and Adam both don't like Sabonis. Think it's the price, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what's not to like. Sabonis with no Fox? That's kind of an automatic, I'm at least interested in looking at it spot for me. I'm surprised. It's got to be price related. I mean, again, you're looking at it right there at the top of the page. The 4.85. You're again as a quick shorthand. 4.5 plus is good in terms of point per dollar, but 5 plus is very good. So at 4.85 on FanDuel, 4.78 on DK, he looks fine. I just like where he's coming up in the Sims in terms of running against these other guys. I think they're underrating that play. %19 usage so far this season. That'll go up. And the assist rate will spike. But let's see. Since I've got Wowie open. Since the beginning of last year, Sabonis, in the raw sense, 1.32 FanDuel points per minute, 1.34 DK points per minute. That's with everybody. If we take Fox out, If we take Fox out, 1.38 DraftKings points per minute, 1.35 FanDuel points per minute. What did I say they were before? So he goes up by 0.1? Yeah, no, those are similar. 1.32, 1.34. So he picks up a little bit more value on DK. 1.34 to 1.38, I think. It would be helpful if I could remember a one-digit number moment to moment. Yeah, it picks up a little bit more extended value on DK. It's not a major hop, though. I don't know. I like the spot. I like the way he projects out. I'll have some. Given how he projects, how he sims, I'll keep my eye on it, but I will definitely have some. They're saying he has more trouble without Fox. I don't know necessarily what we mean by he has more trouble, because the fantasy points per minute go up slightly. All I care about is the fantasy points per minute. I really don't care about if he has trouble with spacing or anything like that. I mean, I know that all leads to scoring, but my point is that the fantasy points per minute go up, our scores go up, and the fantasy points per minute are created by all the spacing and the problems that he may or may not have without those guys. Yeah, I don't really know about that one. It's one to watch. Only 1.2% on DK. Yeah, that gives him some value. So after an hour and a half, I think we've decided that Sabonis is hopefully a good play. I think we've decided that Kristaps Porzingis needs to play in the fourth quarter, and if he does, he'll be a strong play, just to bring him up one more time. I don't know that we've got too many more centers to talk about. Larry's saying 9,500 and up, not a ton of ownership. AD is highest, and he's 8%. That's on, DK? Yeah, 9,800, it makes sense that AD would be getting a little bit of popularity. I'm surprised he's actually that low. I'm surprised he's not cracking into double digits. Duran's out, so that'll create some value. Just jumping over to the other sheet real quick. It was sounding like Bagley in reporting earlier. So we'll take... So that creates a 32-minute vacuum. We'll take Bagley from 18 to 30. I'll have to refine this in just a second, but there's a lot of big bodies on this team too. Yeah, I'll get that updated as soon as we pop off of here. I think Bagley becomes the primary beneficiary there. Projects out like he'll end up being a pretty important piece. He's 4,000 on DK, 4,700 on FanDuel. I'm trying to think of where I want to put him. Played 24 the last time out, 17 a night so far. I mean, like, if I give him 28, I still... Yeah, there's going to be some probably hopping over to Bagley. Power forward and center on both sides, too. Well, that adds a piece of value to the puzzle. Yeah, Stu was already in. Stu was already showing a pretty decent amount of value there. He's got 34 minutes on him already, so I'm not going to really crank him up to like 38 or something like that. I don't think that would be fair. But he'll just pick up a little bit more. I might give him a tweak in usage or rebounding rate or something like that. But we'll get into that. I'll have that update out in the next little bit. With that in mind, coming up on 5:30, I appreciate everybody hanging out for an hour and a half. Gone through some good plays. Hopefully that was helpful. Let's do a quick look since I've still got them open. We'll do this real quick. Hopefully this will be less clunky than it was when I was trying to do this yesterday, as far as me actually clicking on the right thing. This is FanDuel. The lineups that I ran earlier in the top 150. Look at the bones. A lot of bones. Bones. Couldn't get it done on Halloween, Bones. Gotta come out when you'll be 40% owned or higher. Such a spot. I had pivoted into a big chunk of it last night. If that had come through, we'd have had a very good night. Oh well. Jakob Poeltl coming up a pretty decent amount of the time on the FanDuel slate. Triple J. So Aaron Gordon. We didn't mention Aaron Gordon. Player that I like. We've talked about him at the top of the season as a player that I like. Another one of those big men who's just a very good facilitator. Does a lot. Scores, facilitates, rebounds. I like Gordon. He's not at a crazy high projection today. A couple of the days so far this season, we've gotten him at a pretty decently high projection. Today is more normalized, but he comes up a fair amount of the time. In terms of we looked at the players already, but to put everybody together, Poeltl Siakam 1-2 in terms of ROI. That's annoying. Brendan Ingram, assuming he plays. Vooch, some Looney, some Kessler in there. A lot of big men, a lot of centers. A lot of mix of center on FanDuel today, I think. Probably pays to create a little bit of a rotation of center at FanDuel rather than getting concentrated at the position today. Most frequent appearances in the top 1%. Dylan Brooks, some Bones. This is where a lot of your just chalk, mid-range and value guys land. In terms of your high-end players, first name really is, Des Bane and then KP. Jaren Jackson right there. Winners are basically the same when you sort by the winner column. On DK, get over to that one. Top end lineups, Jalen Green. Fair amount of bones on this one as well. This did come up to DK, yeah? Oh, no, this is FanDuel. Was I? Shit. I think I was just showing you FanDuel twice. Was I just showing FanDuel or was I just showing DK? Somebody rewind the show and let me know. Well, this one's FanDuel. It's annoying how dumb I am sometimes. I can't rewind and look. Well, regardless. This is a FanDuel sim. A lot of the same guys. A lot of the guys we talked about. I think they were both FanDuel at the end. I must have accidentally opened the wrong one off the dashboard. Or I just ran 2 FanDuel ones, which would be problematic. Whatever. All right. I don't have a DK summary for you. Apologies. I do need 2 people, Chuck. I need more than 2 people. So, we've got a lot of clear-cut plays. We've got a lot of questions already answered in terms of guys who were potentially going to be playing, not playing. It was FanDuel I was showing. Yeah, so I left two FanDuel ones open and I closed out the DK one. Oh, well. During out. Premium matchup for Ayton now. Blaine points out. That's a good point. Now you'll see ownership rise on the $9,500 guys. Yeah, just grabbing a little piece of value there. All right. With that, you guys, I think I'm going to punch out, get myself in order over here. Trae Young available for tonight. We had him in already. Larry pointed that one out already, too. Larry's beat me to the punch across the board today. Got to get Larry on the news. Anything else? Anything else critical pop up? Marjon Beauchamp. He'll be playing. It's the only other one I see. Oh, shit. Precious is out. Oh, no. I'm sorry. Precious. We knew Precious was out. I'm losing it. I was thinking of Siakam. I saw Precious and thought Pascal and freaked out for a second. Pascal's still in. And, of course, the critical information that we were talking about all show, PJ Tucker will be playing. Don't play him in your lineups. With that, guys, hit the like button, hit the subscribe for me. Appreciate it. Helps us out a great deal by getting those things in. Follow the @rotoscouts Twitter handle and like and retweet those things when you see them pop up. Projections for tomorrow's showdown slate for football are already up on the site. Hard at work on figuring out who the hell all these backup quarterbacks are for the main slate that we're getting this week. Should be a fun one. Those will go up either tonight or tomorrow. Probably tomorrow. Hang out and beer night as far as I know for Wednesday. So probably won't be completely done with them tonight. But keep an eye out on those. And we'll be talking football for the showdown slate tomorrow at some point. We'll be back for basketball tomorrow. We'll be around for football for the main slate on Friday. What else? What else do we got going on? All kinds of good stuff. So with that, good luck out there. Somebody go win something tonight. I will see you tomorrow. Adios.